Awesome. Well, hey there, everyone. My name is Nick St. Fleur. I'm a science reporter with STAT, and I'm super excited you all are here for this session called On Your Mark, Get Ready, Go! The power of play at any age. I'm joined here by the amazing Gary Ware, founder of Breakthrough Play and author of Playful Rebellion. Maximize workplace success through the power of play. So what we're hoping to do with this session is, quite honestly, to make it fun. So I'll be sure to ask you all, if you guys have any questions, feel free to just raise your hands at any time. Feel free to ask them. We hope this can be kind of like intimate, but also, I don't know, just a good time, just learning about the art of play. And I thought it would be kind of fun for, me to start off by asking you, Gary, so often people just think about play as just as a kid and such. But not enough people realize, you can do play as an adult as well. Agreed. So before we dive into that, do you have any good, fun memories from when you were a kid of play, of playing around that just stick with you today and kind of help, define the man you are today?
Yeah. And so in the work that I do, I ask people about their play personalities. This is something that really helps you guide yourself down that playful path. And when I think about when I was a kid, I was the jokester. I was the one when you think about play. I'm probably the reason why people don't want adults to play because they think you're just going to goof around. But when I was young, I'm the oldest of three, and I have two younger sisters. And I feel so bad because one of my favorite holidays was April Fool's Day, and I would booby trap the whole house. And to this day, they're still terrified of April 1st. But in addition to that, I really love imaginative play. I'm a latchkey kid, I'm an 80s kid, so parents were at work, and me and my siblings, we would transform our living room into a pirate ship. Or we made little caves, and then we were in the front yard, and then this was our castle. And so we did a lot of storytelling and whatnot. And I think about all right, so what is that helping me with now as a facilitator, as a storyteller? Being able to sort of think on my feet, use anything in the environment and make it work has been really helpful. And then also, being able to add some levity to the situation.
I'm going to do something and kind of flip the script here over in that I'm going to answer that question myself as well.
Please,
I think it's so
yeah.
fun. So it's funny. When I think about one of my favorite memories as a kid, playing around, I'm a very friendly person. I love meeting new people. I love, learning about new people and all of that. When I was 5 or 6, and this is a story my mother loves to embarrass me with, I was playing soccer, youth soccer, and I'm running down the field for the ball, and I'm running with this other kid. We're both chasing after the ball, and all the parents are screaming, get the ball, we're running, we're getting closer, closer. And then all of a sudden, as I'm about to kick it, I stop, and I turn to the kid, and I say, hi, by the way, my name's Nicholas. What's your name? I just introduced myself, and all the parents are going, no, get the ball. So, I didn't grow up to be a professional soccer player, but I am kind of a professional, hey, how you doing kind of guy now. So let's talk about the power of play. What is play, really? What do you mean by the power of play?
Yeah, in its pure sense, play is just something that you can do for the sake of doing it. Where time passes by, you're engaged in the situation, you're deeply and in a state of flow. But because it's play, it's something enjoyable, something where you're like, wow, I really like doing this. And when it's done, you're like, all right, this was good.
What are some, I guess, examples then of play, especially for us as adults?
Yeah, so oftentimes adults look at play through a narrow lens of goofing off or, that's just what kids do. But again, through that lens of things that you would do just for the sake of doing it, it essentially, so let's just, as far as definitions, there's play and playful and playfulness. Mm-hmm. And so, play could be any sort of activity. I was sort of, as I'm discovering this and really diving into it, I would interview people. And I would interview people like surgeons and stuff like that. They see their work as play. Being able to go in and have that sort of meticulous ability to get into the root of it and whatnot, and they're in this deep amount of flow, and it brings them so much joy to solve challenges and whatnot. On the flip side, I was talking to some engineers. A really good friend of mine He builds bridges and stuff like that. And when I look at the stuff that he does on a day-to-day basis, it's not necessarily like he's out there with Legos and stuff like that. There's like these like charts and stuff like that. But for him, he's solving these problems. And for him, that is play. So yes, those are, your work can be seen as play if you look at it through the right lens. But also as adults, activities that we do can be seen as play. Gardening can be seen as play if you look at it through the right lens. I personally don't like gardening, so I don't necessarily see it as play. However, my mom loves gardening, and every Sunday when I go over and bring my two little kids over, that's what she's doing. And she's just like the biggest smile on her face, and it's bringing her so much joy. And if you let her, she would just be out there all day. So
gardening's not your forte. So what is it you do, Gary, to play? I mean, as the play master.
Yeah. So for me, it depends on the situation. Because growing up, I played music. I played clarinet, saxophone. I was in a few different types of bands. And then as I got older, I sort of let that go, as most people do. Like, I'm really busy. But one day, I took an improv class. Ooh. And that just reawakened everything, and for a few reasons. One, the act of like studying and the activities that we did was like recess. It was so enjoyable. But then, because I got so hooked on it, eventually someone's like, "Hey, do you wanna perform? you wanna be on my improv team?" And so I was like, "Sure, why not?" And then when I did that, it reawakened that art of performance. So that for me is since the play. Some people are terrified. They're like, you get on stage and you don't have a script and you and a bunch of people just make things up and they're so stressed out. But for me, it's very freeing. Matter of fact, especially, so I travel a lot for work and I get back home and then there's a team that I've been improvising with for like the last decade. We will have, on a Friday night, our show's 50 minutes long. We get a single suggestion, and for 50 minutes, I'm completely focused. I'm completely in the zone, and we are just essentially goofing off for 50 minutes, and then afterwards, it's just like a big load is lifted off of my chest. And so for me, that is play. And then also, I love Legos. So
is Legos your yes and in
yeah,
this case?
Yeah, exactly. So when I'm not able to like necessarily, improvise with my ensemble, I'll just grab a bucket of Legos and I'll just start tinkering. And I'm not necessarily building anything in particular, but the art of just putting the bricks together, again, getting into that state of flow. And our colleague who couldn't be here, but I made a little mini stick version. Catherine Price,
the other panelist.
Yes, she wrote The Power of Fun, and she has 3 criteria for fun. It is flow, playfulness, and connection. And so if you think about what are the things that bring you the most fun, it's usually a combination of those things.
Has anyone here ever done improv at all? Oh, yeah, I see some hands. Yeah, awesome. I have not, but it's one of those things I have always wanted to kind of get into. So if I'm thinking about myself, because I was really, while I was kind of thinking about this panel, I'm like, do I play? Do I do enough things in my day-to-day to just, relax and play? And I think I do a lot of it in front of a screen, but what do I do, behind a screen? And then it hit me. I love to dance. And when I say dance, I mean like I dance, as if no one is watching. Sometimes I dance as if no one is watching when everyone is watching on the dance floor. But I was thinking to myself, what do I do for fun? And sometimes in my apartment, I'll put on some songs. I'll put on some musicals like Hamilton. You know the Broadway stuff.
Yes.
And I will just belt out and I will just sing all of Hamilton. I will just dance to my songs. I'm a big anime guy, so I love listening to like anime openers as well and such. And I find to myself, that's how I play. That's how I kind of find my fun. And I'm curious, what are some ways that maybe you all in here play or have some fun? Anyone want to kind of just volunteer? Tell us a little bit about your activities. Or you could just shout it out. What are some activities people do here?
I hang out with kids and do what they do.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you were saying, what is it you do?
I play with my 3 and 1-year-old and I try to inspire them with things that I feel shy about. So we just put on music and dance, just to dance.
Love it.
It's fun and feel confident being silly.
I love that. What are other people doing? I know we're all adults here, but share with us. What are your fun activities? Right over there. Ooh,
I
that's a
love
good
it.
one. Which type? Is it just all MMA or? Nice.
Yes.
My man, your hand looks kind of up. Nope, I'm putting you on the spot. What do you do
Come on,
for fun?
Well, earlier this year I was doing this hip hop dance class.
Nice.
Really dope. Yeah.
Awesome. I saw some other hands right there in the back. What do you do?
I'm a holistic practitioner, a healer, and I really focus on the body, but I feel like sometimes with my client, I play, like they say something and I really use my body. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds tough. And I feel the charge in my autonomic nervous system.
Mhm.
So I'll just get up and like, I need to get up. And I'm not, it's like, okay, you need protection. I'll go in the door. And I just really bring play to it. So there's the
Yeah.
action and there's the recreative experience. And it's really, the energy moves.
I love
It
that.
does.
Go right ahead. What do you do?
I cook unnecessarily complicated things.
Yes. Wait, explain a little bit. Do you just like Google what is the most complex thing I can make with XYZ in my drawer, in my cupboard?
Not like a cookbook or something, and I'll say I could just go buy like chicken thighs and do a thing, but I'll buy the whole chicken.
Right?
No, I'll spend hours just in the kitchen,
Oh,
just put on a playlist, and just zone out.
I love that.
There you go.
Anyone else want to share? Go right ahead. Ooh, very nice. Anyone? Oh, right there in the back. Go ahead.
So I went through a phase of looking through Groupon. They had lots of things you could buy.
Yes.
I did fencing, did not like that. Then I did pole dancing.
Uh-huh.
Introduction to 4 classes, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Yeah. I was a 44-year-old insurance professional. I did it for 4 years and became a very advanced level. Didn't do it for my divorce.
Right.
Of course, yeah.
Which it would be fine if you did too, but
I loved it.
yeah.
So amazing. And I wasn't a dancer. I was more of an athlete, but it takes a lot of athletic ability to do it.
Oh, that's great. And what about yourself?
Right?
Yeah, the core strength.
Yeah.
What about you? Yes. What kind of dance? Just like
Don't discriminate. I would take any dance class.
yes.
And just imagine that. Close your eyes, and it's like you're the only one there, and you're just like, Music video. I feel myself. Yeah, music video.
I think with adults is music our portal to play. Like
It can be, yes.
cooking, he added music. Right?
Yeah.
Changes everything, music, I feel. I feel like driven to put on the music and dance with my kids when I feel frustrated.
Right.
The firefighter, so I do a lot of single parenting because he's not there.
Mhm.
And whenever I feel overwhelmed and frustrated, I'm like, we need music.
Yes.
Dance, and it like helps so much.
Yeah, and Nick, a few things when I was listening to all of your amazing responses. One, no one said it like this, I love cooking. Like you couldn't help but to smile, and it's contagious, and everyone else was smiling. And then two, and this is the thing with play, and I think what keeps adults from like really embracing it is the vulnerability.
Right.
The fact that like you shared something that you're like, I hope no one makes fun of me because I'd like to cook, like and stuff like that. I'm not making fun of you, like it's an amazing thing. But that is the thing with play in its essence, it is a very vulnerable experience. But that is why it's so beautiful, is that it allows us to connect. And then I heard a number of people talk about incorporating children. And if you were at the intergenerational session that Eddie was a part of, Eddie said amazing thing about wisdom and how can we like sort of take that away from, or elders, forgive me, like take that away from like maybe older people. Little kids, they are elders when it comes to play. They have all the wisdom. We just watch them. They will teach us. And I have 2 little kids, 7 and 2, and they are teaching me every day about just letting go, and this is the thing with play and why a lot of adults have a challenge with it. It's not perfect. It's very messy. And that's just how it is.
I think right in the front you had a question or you wanted
Please.
to add.
I work in pediatrics. And so
Oh, great. You're in the right session.
You are interacting with parents and counseling parents as much as you're counseling your pediatric patients. And right now we are in the midst of this really kind of interesting thing where kids are being raised with parenting having all of the social media advice in the background, with having Bluey in the background, who's
Right.
the example of perfect parents. And I do feel that a lot of parents are really intimidated by play. And even when there's still a lot of that expectation that it is going to be perfect, or it is going to be a core memory, or it has to be somehow prescribed. So what would you say to parents to try to just encourage them to just play and to try to, what would be your 5-minute piece of advice
Yeah.
for parents for a 15-minute well visit where you realize they're not playing with their kids as much as they might?
Yeah, and this comes from my experience of doing improvisation. So when I learned improv, we learned these tenets that allowed us to co-create with our scene partners. And the first thing is this concept called yes and. And what yes and is accept the reality and build on it. And so as a parent, it's funny, I know this, and then I still experience it firsthand where I'm like, oh my God, am I doing this right? And yes and is all about, all right, what is the offer? What is in front of me? The kid at the end of the day just wants to do anything. And a lot of times, and it's so funny because my sister, she had her kids before I did, and she would say these things, and I'm like, that just doesn't make sense of like, the kid wants to do this, and she's like, I don't even know anything about that. But it's true. All of a sudden, my 7-year-old is like, hey, Dad, and his play style is the director. He will set up this environment, everything. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then he's like, all right, Dad, all right, so we are sailors, and this is our boat. Here's this, this, and this. And I'm like, I feel stuck. But yes, and is like, all right, this is the reality. They set this reality. Just add to it. And so that's the first thing. Just sort of, accept and then build. The other thing is just one little thing. One little thing. What is it? Like, and at the end of the day, they just want you to be there. Right. So the fact that you're paying them attention, they're not going to be like when they're like 16. Yeah, we tried to do Pirates when I was 3. My parents sucked.
They made me walk the plank.
Oh my God, can you believe that? And then the other thing is embrace imperfection. It is not going to be perfect at all. Matter of fact, my son tells me how bad I am at this. But at the end of the day, he still wants to play. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of judgment that we put on ourselves, and a lot of it's amplified through social media and whatnot. And so we have to give ourselves grace. Right. And then at the end of the day, how can we just do it in little chunks? So a lot of times, in my head, I'm like, all right, we're just going to, and I sort of time box everything. I'm like, all right, we're just going to do this for 10 minutes. And then the cool thing is, after 10 minutes is up, and especially when you really get into it, you realize like, oh yeah, let's keep going. All right, we can go a little bit. We can go, right. How am I doing? Am I good? So did that help?
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I am, right now I cover health, but before I covered health, I used to be known as, my editor used to call me his dead world correspondent. I used to be at the New York Times, and I used to write about dinosaurs, and I used to write about mummies and archaeology and all of that kind of fun stuff, and a bit of space as well. And I bring this in because I once, when I was freelancing for the Times, I wrote a story about playing with kids with dinosaurs. And, so many of us, maybe when we were kids, we loved dinosaurs. These were like our fun things. And then, we kind of lost all our interest in them. But then when you come across a kid again and you kind of pick up those dinosaurs and it just comes back. It all comes back. So I wrote a story about, here's what I would put as the power ranking of the best dinosaurs. Which dinosaur should you pick to just demolish your kid in a dinosaur battle? And I had some people who said, thank you for that, because that was so much fun, just being able to put it all down, just spend that 5-10 minutes playing with dinosaurs with my kids. So I think you could just find all the kind of fun stuff that you used to like as a kid and just bring that in as well. I believe you had a question first. Go right ahead.
Speaking of anxious, thank you. Speaking of anxious millennial parents, I identify as an anxious millennial parent. I sometimes feel like so my son does not like imaginary play. He's like, well, I'm not a pirate. Why would I play that? He is like going to be an engineer someday. And so like, is any play, I sometimes feel bad. I'm like, oh, I should be, encouraging imaginary play with him. Or do I just buy all the Lego aisle at Target? Do you have, is any play great? And if I should just go all in on what he wants, or is it like, should I also encourage imaginary play? Or
Yeah, so I had a parent. It's so funny. I feel like some of these things are universal because I was working with a parent, same sort of thing. And I said, again, in the spirit of improv of yes and, it's like, hey, let's double down on that. And then just like what we do at our house is like we with vegetables, my boys like for some reason like it's like they're allergic to them, and the sight of them it's just like whatever. But we just like we leave them there. So I've learned not to like overly push, but every now and then I'll just like introduce some, and I figure out how to do it in a way that is in the spirit of whatever he's doing. So like maybe with the Lego thing, as you're doing it, maybe you can add a little bit of imagination or try to help them see, hey, look, we're being imaginative here. But at the same time, it's like, hey, if they're cool with that, hey, let's support that.
What are some other ways that people can use play to kind of strengthen some of their relationships? We talked a bit about strengthening your relationship with your kids, but as we talk about it, play at any age. What about with your parents or with your brothers or sisters or cousins and such, or just work colleagues and such? Like, how do you use play to strengthen relationships?
Yes. So this is the first thing that came to mind, just because it's the most recent to me. As you're probably getting, I have a lot of background in improvisation, and recently I started working with some folks using improv skills, improv thinking as a way to work with folks with dementia, and was working with a family, and it could be very frustrating. Right, like you're in there, and then you're trying to have a conversation, and then things go off the rails. And I said, imagine if you can treat this like an improv scene, and we can yes and. And if they sort of throw something off that it like makes no sense, instead of like trying to correct them, like what if you can just accept that and build on it? Because again, just like with kids, it's all about the connection. So, they were like, yeah, they kept saying, they kept like asking the same questions over and over again. So instead of getting frustrated, just sort of yes and then like, oh yeah. And then I forgot what it was, but he had asked about one of his sons, and he said, and he's in Vegas right now, drinking away all of his money. And then like the dad was like, oh, no way. All right. And then like, again, there was something about it that just lit up. And instead of like being like frustrating, it was a bit of play, and it was playful.
So sticking to this topic of relationships, I'm sure many of us would want to know, how do we bring more of this play, into the workplace? How do we, I don't know about you guys. I work remotely. I'm always on Zoom all day, and like I'm just fatigued. And I'm looking at my colleagues. I'm like, I wish I could be more fun. I wish this could be more fun, but it's just work. How do we bring more of that play into our work relationships and such, but in such a way that it's like still genuine, still authentic?
Yeah, and so as it pertains to play, true play is something that we're all invited into, and we have the ability to opt out. So that sort of forced fun of like, now we're going to do ping pong and stuff like that, everyone's like, well, Google did this, we're gonna just throw this in. And it's very like sort of one size fits all. That may be play to some, but it's not play to others. And so the first thing is an invitation. Hey, and thinking about, I call it purposeful play. What is your intention with this playfulness? And so as a way to sort of guide your way through this, I have an acronym. It's called MAP, M-A-P. So M is, what is your method of playfulness? Is it, so you brought up Zoom, is it a really nice connection activity at the top of a meeting? And then A is the audience. Who is this for? Is this for team? So the camaraderie is maybe different, or maybe these are stakeholders or people, at a different level. And then what is your purpose? Connection or levity or something like that. So if you stick within that, that can help you be creative. But at the end of the day, that's why I call it purposeful play. It's trying to do something. And so going back to your point of like, at the end of the day, we're all, sort of burnt out and things like that. A playful way of sort of just acknowledging where we are is a check-in. Just because if you think about it, before everyone was remote, we can pick up on cues when we're in person. Sally from accountant comes into the meeting, we're in the boardroom. We can like sort of like, oh yeah, Sally was in with the investors. I totally get it. And then like we adjust, but in Zoom it's kind of hard. Right. We don't know what happened. So I love to do playful check-ins where it's just, I just want to know where you are. And so I do a thing called red, yellow, blue, red, yellow, green, forgive me. We should put blue in there. Anyways, but where just before we start, I just like, hey, we're just going to quick check-in. Red, yellow, green, put into the chat. And, people put like different color emojis. They type it in. It doesn't matter. However you want to show up is however you want to show up.
What do the different colors mean in that
So
sense?
red means I am fried, I am done, but I'm here. Hey, you're lucky. Yellow is like, hey, could be better. And green's like, yep, revved up, ready to go. And then again, by doing that, now we know where our coworkers stand. And then when Janine is off camera, we're like, hey, yeah, she's red today. Like, we'll have some grace. So that, again, it's playful in nature. It invites people to show up as they are. And then the purpose of that is so as the meeting leader, now I know how to adjust, how to show up for my team.
So thank you for that. I definitely want to get into how play can help us overcome this loneliness epidemic that we have that the Surgeon General will talk about tomorrow. But quick intermission. Are there any games that you had that maybe we all could play right now?
Oh my gosh, thank you, Nick. So another thing that I love to do, and this works virtually, this works in person, is one, it realizes that we are all more connected than we are different. And it's a really fun game called True for Me. And I do this on Zoom, I do this in person, and it's an easy invite for people to participate regardless of introvert, extrovert, because I invite them to just whatever. So how it works, and we're just going to participate here, is I'm just going to say some statements. If they happen to be true for you, you just raise your hand. And then you sort of acknowledge the other people. You sort of look in and you put your hand down. So you don't have to be like, yahoo! Unless you want to. And then I also say, there's no lie detector. So if you don't want to disclose that you are a big day drinker, don't. And so again, it gives people permission to show up however they want. And then, so we'll just jump into it. So again, if it happens to be true for you, just raise your hand. And again, if you don't want to participate, just whatever, nothing's true for you. So the first thing I love to do is, and this is by choice, you like to be a morning person, not by all right, see, look, we got a few.
What about you aspire really, really hard, but you press snooze way too often?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. How many of the snoozer? Yeah, right.
I am a big snoozer.
Right. So this is on that thing.
Very true for me.
How many people you have your alarm and then it's 9:05, 9:10, right?
Yes.
It's true for you. All right. How many people are night owls? Any night owls? All right, cool. I love it. How many of you are what I call a hummingbird? You're not a morning person. You're not a night owl. You probably pass out on the couch about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Anyone? Or is it just me? Hummingbirds. All right, cool.
Yeah, let me try. So,
yeah, please, Nick.
True for me. One of my go-to pleasures, I love true crime, whether it be true crime podcasts, whether it be true crime watching documentaries. What about anyone else? Those things where I'm just is that how I'm going to die? True for me also, I spend way too much time on YouTube.
That's true.
The short, yes. Your husband does. YouTube shorts now, I scroll and I scroll and I scroll. Yeah. Hey, you chimed in. What's a true for you? Yeah.
Oh no.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I like to walk a lot, I guess.
Yeah.
Any walkers?
Hey. Oh, there we go.
And just this weekend, I'm so many steps. Anyways,
any other true for me's that someone wants to share?
Just shout out. Yeah.
True for me, this play is working well and waking me up.
Anyone else feeling more alive?
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyone else want to share a true for me? Yeah, go ahead.
To me, play is competition.
Yeah.
Oh,
that is
true.
Any competitor?
Yeah, who else thinks play is
it
competition?
was like sort of, yeah. And we could talk about play styles in just a moment, but that's, again, everything, there are different forms of play, and some attract others, some don't, and they're all valid.
Let's get into that. What are the different types of play styles?
So,
and especially for those of us who are adults in this case,
yeah.
What are the play styles?
So this has been adapted from Dr. Stuart Brown. He wrote an amazing book on play, and the one that a lot of people think about is the competitor. And so all of these think about it as they have a purpose, and it's not one is better than the other. But the cool thing about the competitor is that you like to compete, and sometimes you compete with yourself. You're like, hey, look, I'm trying to better myself. A lot of times with sports, they have transitioned it into a thing where it seems bad because it's overly competitive. Again, when you start to get to the extreme, that's void of play. You're not playing in that point because it gets out of the intrinsic nature of doing it. But yeah, if you love to compete, again, my middle sister, And I think maybe because she's a middle child, she's very much so a competitor, and she loves to just compete against us, but she likes to compete against herself. She has like her own stats for random stuff. And she's like, yeah, just PR in my Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, that's dope.
Wait, what?
I know, right? But again, that's play for her. Again, it brings joy. So the competitor. And I heard a few other people mention this. It's all about movement. So like you could be someone, and I had a friend, and maybe that was you with soccer. Like you like being out there. This was fun, but it wasn't about winning or losing. It's just the fact that you're moving your body. That's a form of play. I mentioned my son. My son's one of his dominant play personalities is the director, and the director, they like to be in charge of like what everyone else is doing. You think of movie director, and then we have storyteller, and so that can be through movies, that can be through writing.
That's very fascinating. I'm gonna have to maybe take a test to figure out what is
there
my
is
play style.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a test.
Yeah. So you can go through all, and so what I tell people. The Institute for Play with Dr. Stuart Brown, he has all of them, and I invite people to go and just read them, and then you'll start to perk up. You're like, oh yeah. Because you'll start to think of how you played when you were younger,
right? And
then they'll align with some of these. But then this is my invite to folks: is what is one that maybe is not a dominant one that you're interested in? And I have a story about that. If you
go ahead, share real quick.
And so this again was all about adapting. So someone that I was coaching pre-pandemic, their dominant play personality was the explorer. And how they explored through travel, stamps in their passport. Naturally, when the pandemic hit, traveling was not a thing.
Right.
And then they worked from home, so then they found themselves overworking, so a lot of burnout. And they were like, I just want to get back into some form of play. And so we did what is called a play history of looking back. Hey, how did you play when you were younger? And I'm just asking, tell me like what we did in the upfront. And it was so funny. She got a little embarrassed. Again, that's just what happens. She's like, well, I love playing with Barbies. And she's like, well, Gary, I'm not going to Toys R Us and buy a Barbie. I'm like, no. But let's unpack this. What about it was play? Like, how did you play? And she talked about like, I love nurturing them. I was the mommy and stuff like that. I was like, ooh, nurturing. Okay. What else can you nurture if it's not a Barbie? And then so she was brainstorming, and she said, I'm a little bit embarrassed about this, but at one point I wanted to do more gardening, but I've killed everything. I said, okay, all right. But again, play is all about experimentation. It's all about not being perfect. And I said, but the one thing, and you're on the right track, she started to smile. And you can tell, like, all right, there's something there. And so then we were doing some brainstorming, and we found succulents. Succulents is like the thing. You're like, all right, these are hard to kill. Right? They're hard to kill. And so, And so I said, here's your challenge. Go do some research and find a succulent. Just one. And then start to like, read up on it, figure out how to properly take care of it. And so that was her play challenge. And instead of overworking and working through lunch, she spent her lunch, looking up different ways to take care of a succulent. And then we sort of checked in, and then one succulent turned into 10 succulents, and then she started propagating them. And then as of now, I think she has over 500 succulents.
Dang!
She could probably start selling succulents. But again, so this is another thing about play. Right. And passion is that immediately people, like when they get into stuff, they're like, oh, when are you going to start your Etsy shop?
And
that,
how are you
again,
commercialize
sometimes
and capitalize on it?
Takes the play out of it because
that was the job.
Yeah, it's not about her selling it, even though we have all the pure intentions about it. But like, she gets so much joy out of it. And now she does these Frankenstein things with cactuses. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like where she can like surgically remove parts of a cactus and put it onto another part of a cactus to make
Oh, continue.
Yeah, it makes like and it grows. I didn't know that was a thing. And so when you see a lot of these cactuses out there that have like different types of like cactuses on it, people have done that. And I love that. Again, I learned, but she found that out through play.
Yes, I love that, Gary. So, Gary, I want to get into like the loneliness
Yes.
epidemic here. We're going to hear about it a bit tomorrow from the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. But how can play be, I don't know, like a remedy or a cure for the loneliness epidemic? I was just telling you, I spend a lot of my time scrolling through my phone, on social media. I'm now, I'm in my 30s. It's hard to make friends when you're in your 30s now. And I couldn't really imagine myself doing it the same way I did it as a kid, going up to someone and say, hey, do you want to play? Like, as a grown-ass man, I don't know if that's the best approach. So how do I use the play, the power of play to overcome loneliness and I guess to make friends in my 30s?
Yes, and this is where Catherine would come in. In her book, The Power of Fun, she talks about the 3 elements of fun, which is connection, flow, and playfulness. And so as adults, what you can do is you can start to think of and she calls it true fun. So what are the activities that you can do that really brings true fun, and then also do an audit. And a lot of times, like scrolling and stuff like that is the stuff that takes up of our time, but it's like the equivalent of eating junk food. Like, in the moment it may seem cool, but when you're like, your legs are going numb from sitting on the toilet scrolling, like it's not necessarily good for you. And I'm speaking from my own experience.
Of course.
And so then you start to think of what are some activities. So this is the cool thing about it. Most of us search for happiness, but it's like, seriously, like how are we going to find it? But you find it when you're having fun. So what are some activities that you could do that is connection based, that gets you in a state of flow, and is playful? And a lot of times, once you start to find it, there are other people that are involved. And so my middle sister, one of the things that she did, she just went on Meetup, and she started like finding things that like interest her, and she would just experiment with it. And then naturally, again, you're having conversations with folks. And then, so going back to what you were saying, we are so like, kids get it. Like we learn from the wisdom of kids. Kids are like, hey, this was fun. We should do more of this. But as adults, we think it's awkward, it's like cringe, as some would say. But there's something about that of like, just like, hey, like, we're platonic friends. Like, this was like, do you want to play again? Like, and it's like, it's strictly like a thing. But again, like, we're so sort of nervous of like being portrayed a certain way. But
So
that's
overcoming that stigma.
Yeah.
Just ask.
But finding something that is going to stimulate you and make you like feel good. Like again, think about connection, flow, and playfulness, and then the people in that environment, whatever that is, inviting them to like do it again.
Great. Any more audience questions? Oh, right there in the back. Go ahead.
Here comes the mic.
Who's going to make it first? Competition. Oh,
And the winner.
I'm trying to remember the anthropologist that I learned this from, but I'm curious if you've looked at other cultures and how they play compared to more modern cultures. And what I'm remembering them say is that modern cultures were the first, like almost in the world, singing and dancing, for example, was just a way of life. And yet we turned it into, unless you're producing something or performing something, we don't sing and dance anymore.
Agreed.
As adults, right? Like kids can do it, but at some stage, unless you're making money or entertaining other people, you don't do a lot of things. So, I mean, I can make up why our culture has done that because we're so performance and money and oriented. But have you learned anything from those cultures and found ways to integrate it into our culture?
Yeah. And I would also expand that to like just other world cultures as well that you've seen around. Is there anything that you've picked up from them that you would also think that we should do more of?
Yeah. Well, it seems like most other, let's take, for example, Europe. When it comes to like taking time off, it's a thing. Like you don't even
holiday.
think about it. Like I have some European colleagues where it's like, do not message me from June to August because I'm not getting back to you because we're on vacation. And that is not like an earned thing. That is a thing you do. But here in the U.S., I forgot what the stat was. Like so many U.S. employees do not take PTO. And again, if you think about like, where's that coming from? It's coming from this, your time is attached to your value, which is attached to your identity. And in that, if you take time off, it's going to be perceived a certain way, or there's the thought that you may be replaced or whatever. but then we're burning ourselves out. And that's the first thing is, your sort of your output should not be attached to who you are. And just because you produced more does not make you any better. And if we thought about like where that all came from, think about the like sort of the Protestant work ethic sort of thing where, hey, look, you're either working. If you're not working, you're probably going to do something bad. So you should probably just do more work. And the Industrial Revolution, like with Henry Ford. And the funny thing about Henry Ford is the one that coined the 40-hour work week. Prior to that, it was 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. But there were so many accidents on the factory line floor that and the other thing is people weren't buying cars because they didn't have time to do leisure things. And so that's where that all came from. And it's like one of these things where we just we never questioned it again. It's just what we do. But now because we have technology, because we have all these other things, do we necessarily need to be spending that much time? And the interesting thing is, so prior to us having smartphones and being able to be connected with at any moment's notice, we were good about like shutting off. I think about my grandfather. I called him Fred Flintstone because he worked, when he got out of the army, he worked on a construction site, and come 5 o'clock, he was done. But no one criticized like, oh, Harry's leaving. Like everyone else did it. Right. And what he did, he went home, spent time with his family, ate dinner, then went bowling. And so he did leisure things, and we was fine. Like there was not burnout wasn't a thing. But now because we're so connected, and we have this pressure to produce, it's like, it's too much.
Other audience questions? We have time for a few. Go right ahead.
So I also work in pediatrics, and I have the leisure. I work in a private practice, and our leadership board gives money to something we call the Spirit Committee. And it used to be just our holiday party. We would like close the office midday. We would go do our holiday party. And after COVID, we had missed a couple of years because we weren't really getting together. The Spirit Committee put on like all these minute to win it games because we were so excited. We were all going to be together. We were all going to be out of masks. We had like put together all these numbers talking about like how long we had been in masks and all the other things that we were celebrating being together. And so where do you find the will in leadership to, like now our board they commit money to, so twice a year we do a kickball game in the summer, we do our holiday party in the winter, and they shut the office down, which was like, how could you possibly, you're in primary care, you've got to be there when people are sick, and we've done it and it's not so bad. So I think it's, how do you encourage leaders to invest in things that feel, like, I think we have good retention because people feel invested in this place that wants to take care of them.
Yes. Gary, how do you get leadership to invest in fun for their workforce?
Well, the first thing is saying, do you care about your employees? Do you want them to stay around? Because basically, people, if they don't feel cared for, they're going to find another place. Or they're just not going to produce. And it sucks that I'm like, hey, if you do all these things, they'll produce more. And it's true. When we come from a place of play, we actually we rejuvenate ourselves, and we can be more productive. And it seems like counterproductive to like shut down. But if you think about it, studies show that us humans, we're bad at telling when like our like we're full. There's so many studies that show that they would have people do these tasks, and they would have to like tell like when like they are too tired, but they wouldn't tap out, and then the studies would show that they weren't as accurate. So we're bad at that. And so what ends up happening is that we overwork. So as leadership and employers, like realize that by doing this, this is not like frivolous. This is something that is investing in the well-being of your employees. And again, measure it. Again, you're starting to see the benefits of doing it, and some people that I've worked with too, they're realizing like, we can. And then I guess the thing is like, well, then what? But it's like if employees feel like they're cared for, they're going to stick around.
We have another audience question here. Microphone on the way.
I was curious if you can talk a little bit. I think I would know your answer, but you mentioned how Europe shuts down for like that whole month, and I think it's fascinating and fantastic. And I think part of why I'm so intrigued by it is like, you know, even employers who give greater PTO, like paid time off, most people take it in like such short spurts that it's not rejuvenating. And I think that like the European approach of the month off gives you the time to like truly come back stronger.
Right.
So I'm curious if you have thoughts on the 4-day work week and how, if you believe in it, more people can believe in it. Because to your point, we can do things quicker, and do we need to be there 5 days a week anymore?
Agreed.
And would it be beneficial to get that extra work weekend day to rejuvenate it for the next 4 days?
4 days sounds good to me.
I've seen it in action, and this is something where it's not like a, hey, here we go. You know, we're taking it. You need to break down a lot of things for it to work. You need to actually have systems in place, you know, to make sure that people can actually do it. Because a company, like, they said, yeah, we're going to a 4-day work week, but they found that their employees were still working because they were on call. So you actually have to have systems in place where people can really shut down and feel like they can shut down. Because again, it comes from leadership. They're going to follow the example that the leaders do. And a lot of times the leaders, you know, it's like what parents say, I do as I say, not as I do sort of situation. But if the leadership is not following, the rest of the team is not going to follow either.
So they have to take off as well.
They have to. Like, it has to be a thing where it is, we're all doing. And there is actually a book out there called The 4-Day Work Week. And it was by and of all types of company, it was a manufacturing company. They're from my hometown of San Diego, and they made stand-up paddleboards. And everyone shut down, like orders and customer support, everything shut down, and their business did not flop. They had systems in place where messages came in, hey, look, we're not working today, you know, boom, 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 and it's completely fine.
So Gary, to get a little more serious here,
Yes.
tomorrow there'll be you know, a closing session where Dr. Atul Gawande will be talking about, you know, mortality and death and such. And you have a chapter in your book called, you know, Regrets of the Dying. Tell me a little bit about that, Regrets of the Dying, and also how can we ensure that when we are on our deathbeds and we reflect on our lives, we reflect on like the fun, that we lived a fun life, that we took those opportunities to play.
Yes. And so this came from Ronnie Ware. It's funny, we have the same last name, but we're not related. Ronnie was a hospice nurse and spent lots of time in hospice. And these are the common things that she heard time and time again. I wish I would have spent more time with loved ones. I wish I would have not have worked as hard. You know, and these are people, again, they're at the end of their lives, and then they, again, when there's something about being at the end of your life, you're reflecting back and you're like, think about stuff. And they're like, wow, it's too late for that. But guess what? It's not too late for us. So if this is the common thing, you know, you should think about it like, all right, you know, how do I want to be celebrated? And a challenge that me and some friends did, we did a eulogy for ourselves. It's like, we're gone, and we wrote our own eulogy, and what would we want our loved ones to say about ourselves? And the cool thing is, now you can work backwards. So if it is like, wow, Gary was a caring father that spent time with this, and this. All right, and I reflect now, it's like, well, wow, I'm not spending time. Like, all right, what do I need to do to shift that? And so it's important because we only have one life in this material body on this plane that we're in. Yeah, how do you want to spend it? Do you want to spend it chained to your desk and working and burnt out, or would you like to add a bit of you know, levity and fun and whatnot?
And you know, what
Tyler actually has a question now. He's not just putting his hand up. But
if you have a quick one, go right ahead.
Oh, I kind of wanted to follow up on like this loneliness piece. I think I recently saw an article in the New York Times talking about how Generation Z is having like a harder time making friends and keeping them. And I think about even just like now, a lot of like the fun is can be expensive, like going to Topgolf and all the things, or it's focused around like alcohol. And so like, how do we deal with that too? Like not having it be exclusive, like this alcohol culture, and expensive stuff.
Yeah, I think it's, again, redefining what fun is. And again, Catherine would say, What is the playfulness? How are we going to get it to flow? And how can we do it with connection? And then rethinking, like, all right, yeah, there's an amazing book by this woman. Her name is Radha. She created this thing called Daybreakers, and it was a morning dance party because she was tired of staying out late, getting drunk, and being hungover. So she's like, hey, let's do a morning dance party, sober, like completely alcohol-free. So again, how can we flip it on its script? You know, if Top Golf is really expensive, what about Top Golf do we like?
So Gary, as we wind down here, what is your one last piece of advice for our amazing audience here about, just having fun, that power of play? What do you want to leave us all with?
Yeah, I think my invite to everyone watching is, how do you want to be remembered when you're not here? Do you want to be remembered as the person that just worked all the time and didn't have time to connect? Or do you want to be remembered as someone that was loving, caring, connected? And if you want to be remembered as that, what are you going to do about it?
You're bringing me to tears, man. I definitely want to continue living my life in a fun way. And thank you all so much for having fun with us. Please put a strong round of applause for Gary Ware here. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your time at Aspen. And yeah, again, have fun.
Yes.
Thank you.